our guy, David Deacon Schiele, on the program, 10 Tampa Bay. He's got is that a personalized Schiele Falcons jersey, number 10?
It is. It is a personalized Schiele Falcons jersey. I got that in the 7th grade. I saved up birthday allowance, Christmas money, and I was like, I want a custom Falcons jersey with my last name on it. And I saved up and I got it. And so I figured when I set up this man cave, I was like, if I have that above my head, I guess branding wise, it makes sense.
I have so many jerseys with Recher 10 on the back. I knew that's why we were friends. And
Yep.
I copped a Michael Vick jersey.
Yes, sir.
When it came out, that same jersey, and it was my favorite football jersey of all time. My little brother stole it as I got older, but it was just the smoothest looking jersey ever. And of course, in my mind, like one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever. He may not go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, right? But when you talk about most entertaining quarterbacks, he's top 5.
Sure.
I mean, just the ability to run. I mean, it was almost like he was skating on the ice. And he would just flick of the wrist, whether it was with the Falcons or the Eagles. Like he was I think he was created in a lab, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, man. Growing up in Atlanta, getting to have him as the quarterback of the local team was just like, it was mind blowing. He's the reason I got into football. I remember sitting in my mom's car. We actually had a setup where we could plug in this little TV, and his famous run to win it in overtime against the Vikings happened while we were sitting in the car. Wow. And at that moment, it was like, oh yeah, I was locked in from that moment on. So I've just been I'm a Falcons fan covering the Bucs, but I mean, when you're a Falcons fan, you just have to be realistic and be like, yeah, this team stinks right now. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm confident that they're going to beat the Raiders. Like, it's a Desmond Ridder revenge game. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And with what happened with the Bucs in LA, I think this division is wrapped up. And I said this weeks ago when the Bucs were on a bye, that this division was not over and that Tampa Bay had a chance to come win it. And now we're actually seeing it play out. And I just, I'm sitting here like, man, I was right. I don't get no cookies for that. That's just part of the job. But I saw it coming.
We'll get into the Bucs in a second. Let's stay on the Falcons then. What's been the biggest reason for the downturn of their play? I know everybody's going to look and say it's Kirk Cousins and his inability to be able to not throw interceptions and to throw touchdowns and to get Kyle Pitts involved. But is it deeper than that, or is it just strictly the guy under center?
It is deeper than that, but you can't ignore how bad Kirk Cousins has been. Like, you can't ignore that, right? The last time someone had a streak of, I think, 8+ interceptions and no touchdowns over the course of a month was like 2005 when Brett Favre did it, which, that's kind of what he was known for. He was just going to throw it up there and the other team was probably going to come down with it. But at least Brett Favre can turn around and say, man, I got a Super Bowl, right? Kirk Cousins doesn't have that. So for Kirk, I'm not going to blame Kirk so much big picture wise, because here he is on getting closer to 40 and the Falcons paid him all of this money as if he was this young guy who's just was like spurned by the team that drafted him. And he still got a lot of juice left in the tank. That was not the case. Like, it wasn't the case. And so you look at big picture wise and you just see roster mismanagement from the general manager, Terry Fontenot. And it's been that way since he first got the job. The first thing he did was draft a tight end at 4. Kyle Pitts is a bust. Like, he's considered a bust now. He had 1,000 yards in his rookie season, but since then he hasn't really done anything. He's being accused of laziness on his routes. You see them completely neglect to add a pass rusher through the draft. You see them neglect to add to the secondary through the draft. There are so many things that they have not done. And when you look at the drafting styles of the Buccaneers, just because obviously by covering them, I'm seeing both sides. Right. I'm seeing what actually taking care of your roster looks like versus just going out there and being like, oh, let's just throw darts at a name and then try to explain to people why taking best player available made sense, even though ultimately it really doesn't. And so for Atlanta to have been 6-3, they're very fortunate to be 6-3, but that model that they've been running was never sustainable. And if they lose to the Raiders, then heads are definitely going to roll. And no matter what happens at the end of the season, I think this division belongs to Tampa Bay. The Falcons are going to miss the playoffs again, whether they win 9 games or 10 games. And yay, it's a winning season, but you're going to have to make some changes in that front office.
So what do you make of the job done by Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, the head coach and the OC?
Yeah, it's been okay. Like it's been pretty good. I think Raheem Morris he's such a player's coach. You know, I've always liked his energy ever since he was a head coach of the Buccaneers. I liked his energy, and I said, man, it'd be really cool to have that guy as head coach. And now he's the head coach of the Falcons, and it's going like it's okay. Um, what I don't appreciate is the playing in people's faces and the hard headedness that we've seen from like top down. Like it's just been that way for a long time. And basically playing in the faces of reporters, you're playing in the faces of fans, and you're saying Kirk Cousins right now is the same guy we saw pass for 509 on that Thursday night. And it is very clearly not the same guy.
Right.
It's not the same guy. This is not the same team. And if you're trying to tell me that who we saw from Tampa Bay when they were 4-6 is who they are after yesterday, that's not true. You know, so like you just have to be honest about it. And really, I wouldn't throw Michael Penix in right now, only because I think you would really mess him up. Like we saw this same thing play out with Desmond Ridder. Not saying Desmond Ridder and Michael Penix are on the same level, but Atlanta failed to play Mike in the preseason. Why? He's your backup. He's not going to get any other reps. You got to give him some. You got to give him some game reps. If you give him his first live action, real game reps, like meaningful game reps, late in a season when you're trying to like salvage something, you could really mess this guy up. They should have just played him in the preseason. So that's on Raheem Morris for not playing him and just sitting there and throwing out third string quarterbacks. And it's just like it's legitimately roster mismanagement. It's like they're just playing around and they're like, yeah, we'll just do some things and see how it goes. And that's why I call them an unserious franchise on the air all the time. It's unserious.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like I know so many people that love Raheem as a human being, right?
Sure.
And they say like, oh, he's done well as an assistant coach. He had a good year with the Buccaneers. But I just look at it, it comes down, it's just like a quarterback, it comes down to decision making. And I look at some of the things in late game situations, and I look at some of the decisions that he makes as a head coach, and I'm just like, being a good guy is only going to take you so far, because eventually you get to a point where it's just like you constantly make the wrong decision. Your roster mismanagement, your game management is going to end up biting you in the ass. I don't think he's at any risk of losing his job, but I'm sure that the seat gets warmer for him the worse that they play down the stretch.
Yeah, and look, Atlanta came into the season, they had cap room. You've got a new head coach, you've got cap space, you've got a top 10 draft pick, and you really look like you can start sort of fresh, right? You can start sort of fresh. Well, you go out, you get Kirk Cousins. Okay. And also you tampered to do it. So that cost you a little bit. And then you draft Michael Penix and you're like, well, this is for the future. And then Kirk is for now. And you're trying to like PR spin it in a way that it makes sense. However, if Kirk plays the way you think he's going to play, because you're paying him this much money in order, like you're paying him 180 mil. So you're paying him to be an elite quarterback. If he plays like an elite quarterback for 3 to 4 years, that's the entirety of Michael Penix's rookie deal. Right. So like, what are you talking about? You have no future. You don't have one. It doesn't really make sense. If you just wanted somebody to plug in the gap for a little bit while you build and get Michael ready, then you could have gotten somebody else. You didn't have to go get Kirk Cousins. But if you were so bought in on Kirk Cousins is going to be our new franchise quarterback. We haven't had one since Matt Ryan. We're going to have to get a guy in here. Okay, great. Then you need to commit to building a team around him. So even if Kirk isn't the guy, right, at least you started building pieces around him to where you now are a quarterback away.
Yeah,
but they didn't do that.
Or they could have, instead of getting Cousins, if they were going to draft Penix, go get a Flacco, go get a Jameis, go get somebody like that. That's a bridge guy that'll give you a year or two. And maybe after 6 games, like we saw with the Giants with Kurt Warner, play 6 games and bring Eli in, right? Like we see this in other situations, right? You have a guy, you draft him, you're like, all right, it just seems like the planning has been very poor. I want to ask you about the planning for the Buccaneers in that game yesterday against the Chargers. A 40 spot, a 40 burger, a 40-piece nugget. top of the head of Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. What was the one thing that stood out to you the most about that Buccaneers victory?
Man, there was so much. I mean, it's hard to pick out one
Yeah.
thing because of how impressive it was on both sides of the ball. Now, it didn't start that impressive for the defense, but they were able to really lock in. Todd Bowles talked so much after the game about how at halftime they were like, all right, look, we're going to have to lock in the second half. We're going to have to shut things down. And they did. Jamel Dean gets the first interception against Herbert since week 2. You know, like you see Tampa Bay really starting to put together a complete game as a team. Usually it was like the offense having to pick up the defense, or like in Carolina, the defense had to pick up for the offense. This was a complete effort against a good team. That's why I'm saying this might be the most impressive win of the season. And what gives it the edge over the win in Detroit is the fact that we know everybody is not 100%. There are injuries, and they were able to overcome, and they put up 40 on the top scoring defense in the NFL. And Harbaugh teams don't give up 500 yards. Like they just, it's only happened, I think, 3 times, with Sunday being the 3rd time. So everything was so impressive. Jack Browning got a day off. So you don't have to punt. And there's so many things that are impressive. And now you have national media members saying, wait a minute, this Buccaneers team might be pretty serious. You know, the last couple of years, they've just kind of survived the South and just kind of settled into that 4 seed. They have a legitimate shot at the 3 seed now. So this isn't just a look, they're just better than everybody else in the South, and they're going to kind of fall into the 4 seed and go into the playoffs. No, this team could win 11 games and host a game as a 3 seed in the playoffs.
Where do you think they stack up right now in the NFC hierarchy? Or are they top 3, top 5? Like I know if they win the division, they'll obviously get one of the top 4, but you know, do you have them above the Lions? Do you have them slightly below the Lions? Because I think the consensus right now is probably Philly on that 10-game winning streak is probably number 1, but where do you have Tampa Bay in kind of that pecking order?
Yeah, this is so interesting. I'm glad this is not college football, because the Bucks beat the Eagles and they beat the Lions. So I'm glad we're not in a college football system where you got to try to figure out how to stack these teams up based on, you know, who beat who and who lost to who. But right now, honestly, I mean, you look at it, and the Bucks after yesterday have to be right behind the Lions and the Eagles, even though they have already beaten those teams. What those teams have done and the streaks that they've gone on is really impressive. I'm not here to say Tampa Bay would lose a rematch with Detroit or would lose a rematch with Philly. I think they could still beat those teams if they were to play again, especially if they're at full health. If they can get Antoine Winfield Jr. back, and then Jordan Whitehead, I know it's going to be a little bit before he comes back, but if that team can get its pieces back and they really are at full health, sans Chris Godwin, yeah, I mean they've got a shot to beat anybody in the NFC. But right now, after watching Tampa Bay yesterday and then watching Seattle last night, it's really hard not to put Tampa Bay right behind the Lions and the Eagles, just based on, you know, what we've seen lately.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I was going to ask you some Ray stuff next, but we're going to move on to the more important topic at hand. Do you have is that my little eye, is that a rated R superstar spinner belt?
That is the rated R spinner belt, man. I became a kid with adult money a few years ago, and I was like, dude, I've been eyeing this spinner belt for a long time.
Not a John Cena spinner belt, a rated R superstar.
It's the rated R one. Now, I know it's not the one. It's not the one Edge designed. It's not the one he designed. He designed a whole belt, and they was like, we're just going to slap your logo on the spinner. And I get that. However, when it was revealed on that episode of Monday Night Raw, Lita threw the original spinner into the lake, and then Edge revealed the rated R spinner. Dude, I mean, this belt's sick. It is that's a sick looking belt. And every time I bring it to a show, it draws attention. Every time.
That's my buddy had a Smoking Skulls Stone Cold belt, and he sold it at WrestleMania years ago because not many people had like one of the authentic big gold plated one, old school Stone Cold. It looked like my friend's whole shoulder disappeared. Saturday night's main event, Nassau Coliseum, you know, the throwback, Jesse the Body Ventura. You get the blue shirts with the bow ties to the referees. No big swerves, no big title changes. We know Chelsea Green wins the U.S. championship, but Rock doesn't show up. No big bloodline kind of involvement. Let down, or just are we spoiled because we're used to, all these big swerves and all these big surprises at the end of shows?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the hardcore wrestling fan being a little bit upset after being spoiled. And to be honest, there's a reason we think that way, and it's because WWE's been cooking this year.
Yeah.
They have really been cooking. It's hard for me to find a consistent string of stories that I just flat out didn't care about. Just about everything has been good. You go from what's going on with Chelsea Green winning the Women's United States Championship. Super happy for her. You look at that story. The feud she had with Michin was cool. I love what they're doing with Tiffany Stratton. They're basically putting her over, and dude, when she cashes in, the ovation is going to be epic. Right. I know it is. The pop's going to be epic. You go from that, then you had the Carmelo and Andrade 7-game series or 7-match series, however you want to put it, all the way up into what we've seen with the Bloodline. They've just been cooking from top to bottom. So I understand, hey, NBC, this is going to be a big deal. You've got the casuals watching. You've got people who haven't watched wrestling in decades tuning in just because, oh, wow, wrestling's on. I want to check it out. I think we have to remember WWE is a brand. They are all about branding. So they're not trying to just give you this hardcore, wrestling show with just, swerve here, surprise here, boom, this and that. They were trying to showcase the best of the best. That's why there were so many title matches. That's why they let everybody cook for a little bit. We got 2 hours of really solid wrestling. That's what we got. We got 2 hours of solid wrestling. It was a good display. And it was purposeful for them to have Kevin Owens attack Cody Rhodes after the show. That was intentional because the hardcore fan is going to be on socials and looking for that stuff to continue that storyline. But if you're a casual watching, you're going to be like, I saw this guy, Cody Rhodes. I remember Dusty Rhodes. I think that's his, that was his dad. He won, but then he got attacked and he was stretchered out. Like, that's how you would end a Monday Night Raw.
Right.
But that's not how you would end a Saturday night's main event. So overall, I think they played their cards right. Like, there's no need to add in all this extra stuff. Like, say, like the hardcore fan, I know that's what you want, but you got to remember Saturday night's main event is on NBC. So the casual fan can become hardcore and the new viewer can become casual. Saturday night's main event is how I became a hardcore fan. Years ago, or I guess 17 years ago, it's been now, I saw Randy Orton RKO John Cena through a steel chair. And I was like, yo, and that was on Saturday night's main event. And I was like, yeah, I got to see this Randy guy get what's deserved, because that was messed up. And of course, that set up the whole thing with John Cena, getting injured, coming back at the Royal Rumble in 2008, which led up to WrestleMania 24. I mean, that's what it is, dude. That's what the event is about. So I liked it.
Yeah, it's a great point that you bring up, because who are you swerving?
Right.
You can't swerve people that don't watch all the time, because they're going to be like, oh, how am I supposed to be surprised by that? And
it's not
surprised. It's not. For people that said that just Saturday night's main event was just another PLE, it's not. It's not, because the PLE, those are the people that are tuning into Peacock. Those are the people that want to go and to be able to watch this stuff, and that kind of follow across the storyline. So the more and more we got closer to the date, I was expecting less of a swerve and more of a traditional, just wrestling show. And for all the people that say like, oh, if you want to watch real wrestling, go to AEW. I don't think that's, I think that's, you couldn't be farther from the truth when you have some of the guys that they have in there. I mean, yeah, they do storylines. Yeah, they do incredible mic work, but you can't tell me some of these incredible wrestlers and these performers in their ring are just, second rate, right? I couldn't disagree with that sentiment more. Where do we go next with the Bloodline, though, I think is a huge aspect of this. I am a little surprised that we haven't seen The Rock at all. I thought we were going to see him at Survivor Series just at the end, maybe up on the Titantron, maybe just, going out there and giving somebody a stare. Where do you think we go next? Is it an introduction of maybe a new member? Is it somebody turning? Does Drew McIntyre now get involved? Because it seems like he's beefing with everybody. What do you think is the next step, the next progression of the storyline of the Bloodline?
Yeah, I really don't know. I think they've had to change some things because of the legit injuries that took place at War Games. And you know how it is, Jay. In wrestling, you got to book backwards. So they know how it ends. And then all you got to do is write, okay, well, here's where we are now. Here's where we want to go. How do we get there? And you put the start and the end in pen. Everything else is in pencil.
Right.
So I think they're still erasing and writing stuff as we speak, trying to figure out where to go. I don't know, but I can tell you this right now. January the 6th on Netflix, when Roman Reigns goes against Solo Sikoa for the right to truly be the tribal chief, that's when The Rock is probably going to show up.
Yeah.
That it has to be, right? Like you're moving to Netflix. You know John Cena is going to be there. The Rock's got to be there. Like you got to pull out all the stops, right? Again, we're talking about branding. We're talking about how to like really sell something to keep people coming back week after week after week. You got to really hammer that home. So that's probably when we see The Rock. Now, here's my thing, and I was just talking to a coworker about this. When you're doing tribal combat, I vividly remember them saying in tribal combat, you cannot be interrupted. Like that's like it's disrespectful.
Right.
To interrupt tribal combat. Okay, well, literally at SummerSlam a year ago, Jimmy interrupted the match with Jay and Roman. Yeah. And I was like, that breaks the rules.
Yeah.
So like, are you going to follow it this time? Or are we you just want us to forget that was ever said? Like that was never canon. Like, you know, so that's my only thing. Like, where does The Rock play into it? Because if it's tribal combat, he can't really interrupt the match. However, they've already done an interruption of that. And, you know, if he comes out before, after, I don't know. But I do know January the 6th on Netflix, that's got to be when The Rock shows up and they start building towards Mania, which I think should absolutely be Rock and Roman.
So then what's Royal Rumble then? Rock and Cody? So, right?
Yeah, because that's
he wants his pound of flesh there.
Yeah, that's what it's shaping up to be. You're probably going to have The Rock and Cody. Cody's going to go over. Like this isn't 2013, 2014 anymore. So Cody should win that match. What my issue is don't neglect Cody's WrestleMania build as a champion because you're so focused on Roman and Rock. So if they try to muddy the water too much with Cody and The Rock, let's not forget that the seeds were planted for WrestleMania with Cody. Well, really at the previous WrestleMania, but at the Royal Rumble at Tropicana Field, those seeds were already planted. And then of course that build all the way up to night 2, which was just, that was cinema. That was perfect cinema.
So sorry to interrupt you. So it looks like we're heading on a crash course for CM Punk and Seth Rollins to probably fight at WrestleMania.
100%.
Probably for the title. That'll be the favor, whatever. Rock and Roman. So Cody, it's got to be one of two people. It's either Randy Orton or John Cena, right? I mean, that's got to be the two.
Exactly.
What is the better outcome, or what do you think is the more likely outcome of the two?
Honestly, man, personally, I would like to see it go to Randy. Mm-hmm. Randy and Cody had a WrestleMania match. Now, it was a triple threat, but they've had a WrestleMania match. We know Cody as someone who can be taken seriously in the ring, partly because of Randy Orton. Legacy was one of the better factions, and it doesn't get a lot of credit. It really doesn't get a lot of credit, but that was a really good faction, and I liked what Cody was able to do while part of that group. And his first run in WWE wasn't the same when that group broke up. It just wasn't. So look, Randy's one of your mentors, and when you let Randy cook as a heel, it's really good. His heel run, and when they were locked down and they were in the PC or they were in the Thunderdome, whatever, that was some of his best work. Not his best heel work ever. I think Bald Randy's the best heel, but that was some of his best work as a heel, 100%. I think if you let him tap into that, you set that up, I like that.
I don't know if you can ever. I think there's certain points of wrestlers' careers where there's no turning back. I don't think you can get him to be that heel because there's always going to be that underlying respect for Randy Orton. Like nobody wants, like I've seen it all. I saw him kiss Stephanie. I saw him punt John Cena's dad. I saw every iteration of Randy Orton there is, right?
Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah.
But I don't know if you can ever get him to be that devilish heel. And I think now with seeing some people cheering Kevin Owens doing what he did to Cody, I think it's going to be flipped. I think Cody is going to be, I think somehow, some way, it's going to be him as the heel and either Cena and Orton as the babyface.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, so if Cena's involved, then there's only one
no
role
doubt.
Cena can play.
Right.
Like there's only one
Right.
role he's playing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's tough. And we've heard Cody talk about, the full effect of what a heel turn would mean for him
Yeah.
and the company as a whole. That's why it's not just so easy to do that, to where we mentioned AEW. AEW is so niche. Like it's just
Right.
like you have somebody just booking things because like, oh yeah, let me just book it. AEW is not really concerned about their branding like
No, they're not.
WWE is.
They're
Like they're
not. It's
not.
more of it's an elevated independent show, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it
it
is.
is.
It's a good alternative. There's some good wrestlers there, but I don't even compare the two between AEW and
Exactly.
WWE. It's not the
Exactly.
same because that's it's a promotion, right?
Yeah.
The WWE is a brand. They're a
Correct.
business. They're
Mhm.
traded. Like it's totally different. When you
Yep.
look, that's why I think for this Cody Rhodes thing, I'm glad we're going down here. He couldn't do that with AEW because he was the booker. Then he did this thing. If he loses, he can never challenge for the championship. There was always that push and pull. He threw his weight belt and they threw it back. Like now, there's got to be some like planting the seeds of a baby face before you become a heel. And I think vice versa, you want to cheer for a long time heel too, because you like to see the different sides of the guy. But I think we're starting to see it. He just hit crossroads on Kevin Owens on the chair. That's a heel move to win
Yes.
Saturday night's main event. So
Yes.
I think it'll be easier for him. And as much as he'll say about like, oh, the business side of it, I get that. But you're not John Cena, right? Like it's still like we're still in the infancy of him coming back and not being Dashing Cody Rhodes, not being Stardust, not being part of Legacy. Like this is a different iteration of Cody Rhodes altogether. And I think if he turns heel, A, I don't think it'll be that hard. And B, I think people will buy it because people like to see different sides. It's almost like what we saw from Randy 10, 15 years ago. We were cool cheering for babyface Randy, but we were also cool chilling, heel Randy because he did some devilish ass things. I think that's where Cody is. And I think it just makes more sense and it gives them more options if he starts moving in that direction of being a heel character.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. And it also kind of reminded me of Drew McIntyre's run when he first came back.
Right.
Super over. Super over. I think about the moment he gave the kick to Brock on the stage and picked up the belt. He wasn't champion yet.
Right.
And he picked up
Brock
that
told him
belt.
to pick up. Brock told
And
him to pick up the
Brock
belt.
told him, hey, he's like, pick up the
Yep.
belt. He
Yep.
picked it up and everyone goes nuts, right? Claymore on the stage, pick up the belt. You're not champion yet. And Drew has a similar type of story. Didn't work out the first time. He left, got a little bigger, got a little hair on his chest, comes back. And yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of that. But slowly you started to see kind of that heel turn coming for Drew. And he's been cooking as a heel. He's been
Yeah.
cooking, dude. And it's been really, really good work. It's been fantastic work. I like the move to have him beat Sammy. That's great. You need that. He needs wins like that. I thought his Hell in a Cell match with CM Punk was awesome. Did not make him look weak at all in that loss. So yeah, dude, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said about Cody. How do you do it? Because if you're focusing on The Rock and Cody and you're trying so much to build towards that, you talked about planting seeds. You got to
Right.
actually make it work. Like you have to make it work. Don't rush it. That's the whole thing. I'm not a booker, so I don't know how they would do that. But if that's your endpoint, remember you got to work backwards. But you've got something kind of in pen here with Cody and Rock that you need to work around. So that's where I'm going to be interested in seeing. Okay, how do you maneuver now, storyline wise? How do you maneuver now, especially because now we're in an era where everything is connected. All
Right.
of these stories are connected to each other in some form or fashion, and everything is bloodline related, basically. So, yeah, that's kind of my interest point, and I'm gonna watch. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch anyway.
I'm with you. And I wonder, you said pen and pencil. I wonder if Rock and Cody is not written in pen. Maybe it's one of those things. Remember, he brought him in close and he whispered in his ear. Maybe the way to make him an ultimate heel is by Cody turning on Roman or doing something to help The Rock, right? Maybe Cody does something like, because it has to be dastardly, right? Eventually,
Yes.
it's got to be like a full thing. You can't you tiptoe, you kind of plant the seed, but then it's just got to be whoop. There you go. You're going to be the champion. You're going to be that guy. Real quick before I let you go, I was thinking about this the other day. I would love to see somehow, some way, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Drew McIntyre get together and kind of commiserate in some way. We're against Roman. I can't believe all these people turned against them. We have our differences, but the three of us, almost like we saw when, who was it? Like Drew Corbin and Lashley, or Drew Corbin and Ziggler, something like that, a couple of years ago, when it was just like-minded heels got together. I mean, think about that three-way, right? Like with those three guys going up against a bunch of different players, with Rollins, Drew McIntyre, and Kevin Owens, because they all got beef with the Bloodline for one reason or another.
Yeah, man. You know, that'd be interesting because you have very strong characters there individually. When you put them all together, I do wonder how you would do that. That's going to be interesting. I think it's been all
Punk, Jay, and Roman, or
oh my
Punk,
gosh,
Jay, and Roman against Seth, Drew, and
yeah,
KO.
yeah, bro. Come
That'd
on,
be
man.
badass. We're
That'd be
fantasy
cool.
booking. We're not bookers, but we're
Yeah,
not
man.
bookers, but we'll try
We're
to
going
be
to
one
turn
day.
on. We got to turn on WWE 2K24 to go ahead and try to see how that's going to look.
You got that right, buddy.
Yeah, ain't no way we have the power to book that.
They're not ready for Deacon and Jay talking WWE. Check him out on all social media, Deacon_Schiele. He's got a lot of great stuff going on. 10 Tampa Bay guys do an unbelievable job. And check out Game Day Grace as well. Really love what you're doing with that, kind of looking at the faith side of not just sports, but just everything involved with the media side. So thank you so much for your time, my brother. Always great talking to you. We could have probably done this for another 2 hours, but keep up the great work. Give my love to everybody over there at 10 Tampa Bay, and I'll see you down the road somewhere covering our Tampa Bay teams here in the Bay Area.
All right, man. Be easy.
All right. One and only David Schiele. Appreciate you. Good